most of us, if we're real honest, even if you're a Christian or you believe in God or you're a church person or whatever, for the most part, we're not really on a truth quest, and we're not really on a do the right thing quest. We're on a happiness quest. I want to be happy. So you give me 3 options or 2 options, or suddenly I'm choosing a major or a school or whatever it is, and my inclination is, and it's that heart thing, is which of these will make me happiest, and I just tend to drift toward happy. And then I send my brain, again, go find me some reasons to support Happy Quest, because I want to be happy. And the problem, as you know, is what makes me happy today makes me unhappy tomorrow. So I just chase these things, and every time I reverse directions, I have reasons for it. I mean, just to be bottom line, people get married and divorced for the same reason. Well, he makes me happy. Well, now he doesn't make me happy. She makes me happy. I think I'll be happy if I'm married. I'm not happy anymore. People start and stop smoking for basically the same reason. I like the way it makes me feel. I don't like the way it makes me feel. I like the way it makes me feel. We're crazy because we're on happiness quest. Our heart gets latched onto an option. We start coming up with reasons, lie to ourselves, and boom, there we go down in the wrong direction and buy things we don't need and don't do the things we should do. And it's absolutely crazy. And we really just have ourselves to blame. And it's because we don't ask this question and really ask this question. Am I being completely honest with myself? Am I being completely honest with myself? Another way of asking it is this. Why am I doing this? You have to pause. Why am I doing this? Really? Why am I doing this? Really? What's the real reason I'm doing this? And the reason we don't ask this question, it is a very, very, very convicting, uncomfortable question. There are times we don't even really want to know why we do the things we do. But if you want to make the right decision, and if you want to look back on a defining moment in your life and go, whoa, I'm so relieved. That's what I opted for when it came to that house, when it came to that purchase, staying put, getting in and out of a relationship, buying whatever it might be. You've got to begin with asking yourself this question. Am I being completely honest with myself? Now, there's another thing that makes this really difficult as well. The other thing is, and don't get up and leave till I finish, there's something kind of wrong with you, okay? There is. There's something wrong with you, and you don't have any control over it. And let me explain what I mean by that. And I have to do that. I'm going to look at a verse. In fact, if you have a Bible and want to follow along, we're just looking at one verse, so there won't be much following along. It's just one verse. Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. Jeremiah 17:9, if you want to find it. Jeremiah is kind of in the middle of the Bible. Let me kind of set this up for you. This is interesting. Jeremiah was a prophet, not a bullfrog. Jeremiah was a prophet. It might have been a bullfrog as well. Jeremiah was a prophet, and he was a prophet around 600 BC, 585. He was a prophet actually for 40 years to Judah, and the kingdom of Israel had split, and he was a prophet in the southern kingdom where Jerusalem was. And he was a prophet during a time, and this is so important, when God was judging the nation of Israel. God had a contract with Israel. God said, if you behave, if you obey, if you'll keep my law, then I'll bless you. And if you abandon me and worship pagan foreign gods, I'm going to abandon you and just kind of watch you spin in the wind until you come back to me. So this was a time when Israel and Judah specifically had abandoned Yahweh worship, or worshiping the one true living God. So they were being judged. So here's the story. Around 605 BC, Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king or the emperor of Babylon, came through and went to Egypt and conquered Egypt and basically destroyed the Egyptian army. And on his way home, he stopped in Palestine, or Israel, and conquered Palestine and Judah and Israel. He conquered that whole area and essentially said, okay, I'm your new Lord and master, and from now on, you send your taxes and your wealth to me. And then he picked a guy named Jehoiakim, and he said, Jehoiakim, you're going to get to be the king of Judah, but you're working for me. Okay, so don't start thinking you're like a real king. You're a vassal king. You're like a servant king. And then Nebuchadnezzar went home back to Babylon and left Jehoiakim in charge of Judah. Well, Jeremiah, the prophet, went to Jehoiakim and said, now look, the reason that we are under Nebuchadnezzar's thumb is because God's judging the nation, and we just need to go with that. Just send him his taxes, send him his money. Don't get any ideas. You're not really a real king. You're just kind of a pretend king, and that's okay. The main issue is not who the king is. The main issue, who are we going to worship? The issue is, who are we going to worship? Are we going to keep worshiping these pagan gods, or are we going to worship the real God? So Jeremiah is trying to get the nation to turn back to God. Meanwhile, Jehoiakim's thinking like, I'm the king, and I don't want to send taxes and money to Nebuchadnezzar over there in Babylon. So he decides to raise an army, and he's going to fight Babylon and free his nation from, Babylonian tyranny. And Jeremiah the prophet's like, okay, that's a really bad idea. Then he goes to Jehoiakim and says, that's a really bad idea. Number one, do you know how big they are? It would be like Hilton Head, South Carolina, declaring war on the United States, essentially. And no offense if you're from Hilton Head, but you can imagine trying to raise an army and saying, hey, we're not part of the United States anymore. We're not, it would take about 3 hours for that to be over with, okay? Well, that's essentially what Jehoiakim does, because he gets all puffed up and arrogant, and Jeremiah is going, Jehoiakim, you can't defeat Nebuchadnezzar, and besides, God's not going to honor it because God's judging you. The issue isn't how big is your army, the issue is who is your God. Jehoiakim doesn't listen to Jeremiah, launches this attack. There's a big battle, not actually a pretty small, short battle, and Nebuchadnezzar comes in and squashes Judah once again, throws Jehoiakim out, and he puts in a new king named Zedekiah. And he says, okay, Zedekiah, don't make the same mistake as your predecessor, okay? I'm making you king, but you're not a real king. You're kind of a fake king, because I'm the king. I'm Nebuchadnezzar. You send me the taxes, send me a percentage of all the crops, behave yourself, and I'll let you pretend like you're a king. And then Nebuchadnezzar goes home. A few years go by. Zedekiah goes, you know what? I'm going to make a truce with Egypt. And together with Egypt, we're going to conquer Nebuchadnezzar and send him running. And Jeremiah goes to see Zedekiah and says, okay, Zedekiah, look, that's a bad idea. It's a bad idea because God is judging Judah. You can't win because God's not for you. God is for Nebuchadnezzar. He's using Nebuchadnezzar to get the people's attention. The issue isn't who's got the biggest army. The issue is, who are you going to worship? And Zedekiah says, get rid of this guy. Eventually, Jeremiah won't shut up, by the way. He has Jeremiah put in a well. And in this well, Jeremiah continues to prophesy, which I think is a pretty interesting picture if you think about that. You're walking by and you hear this voice, repent, repent. And where's it coming from? Oh, it's in a well. It's a talking well. Anyway, and then poor Jeremiah, he gets kidnapped. I mean, his life is just horrible because the prophet always had bad news. Anyway, Zedekiah's like, I'm not going to listen to Jeremiah. And so he puts Jeremiah in jail, launches this, raises an army, decides he's going to throw off, Babylonian rule. And guess what Nebuchadnezzar does? Exactly what Jeremiah said he would. Sends his army down, squashes Zedekiah, pokes out his eyes, kills his family before he takes his eyes out, puts him in chains, and hauls him off to Babylon to be kind of something to show off to all the other people in the kingdom, to show how powerful Nebuchadnezzar is. Now, interesting story. You should read the Bible. It's all in there. Now, during that time, Jeremiah is watching these kings make these terrible decisions. I mean, it's like, hello, a fifth grader would know that you don't want to raise an army against Babylon. They just defeated Egypt. I mean, there is no way you're going to win. And time after time, the king said, get out of here, Jeremiah. We don't care what you say. We're going to worship whatever God we want to, and we're going to be the big shots. And again, it didn't work. And during that time, Jeremiah, he writes the whole book of Jeremiah, essentially. But in the book, he makes a statement that describes something that's true of you and true of me, just as it was true of Jehoiakim and Zedekiah. And he makes this overarching statement about the human heart and why it can't be trusted. Here's what he says. Jeremiah 17, verse 9. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Your heart, my heart, your mama's heart, your children's heart, your grandbaby's heart. Now you're going, no, not my grandbaby. My grandbaby's perfect. Your grandbaby was born with a deceitful heart. Just give him or her a few years. You'll see it, all right? The heart is deceitful above all things. And then listen to this last phrase. And beyond cure. Do you know what that means? It means it can't be, say it with me, cured. Yeah, you don't have to be a professional preacher to understand. It means there's no cure.